The Catarian Queen Solaris loomed over Andrew Bryant, her psychic assault crashing against his mind like waves on an unyielding cliff. Everyone feared the alien queens, except this human soldier. New York City lay in ruins around them, smoke rising from shattered skyscrapers. The Carian invasion had swept across Earth with terrifying speed, their advanced technology and warrior queens overwhelming human defenses. Major cities fell one by one as the aliens' psychic abilities paralyzed Earth's forces with primal terror. Andrew's unit had mounted a desperate counterattack in the city's rubble. Now, as his comrades fled in panic, he stood alone before Queen Solaris. Her massive form towered above him, insectoid features twisted in a mix of rage and curiosity. Andrew's grip tightened on his rifle, heart pounding but resolve unbroken. Solaris's psychic probe battered his consciousness, seeking to crush his will. Andrew grimaced, fighting through the mental assault. To his surprise, the expected wave of paralyzing fear never came. He met the alien queen's gaze, defiant. Solaris's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Impossible," she hissed, voice resonating with otherworldly power. "No being has ever resisted my abilities." Before Andrew could respond, Catarian warriors surrounded him. With a gesture from their queen, they disarmed and restrained the human soldier. Solaris's compound eyes studied Andrew intently. "Bring him to the mothership," she commanded. "This anomaly requires further study." Hours later, Andrew found himself strapped to an examination table aboard the massive Catarian vessel. Alien scientists prodded him with strange instruments, running test after invasive test. Through it all, Andrew maintained his composure, refusing to show fear or subservience. Days blurred together as the experiments continued. Andrew's defiant attitude only seemed to intrigue his captors further. He learned fragments of information: the Catarian Empire's matriarchal structure, the genetic harvest of humanity, the Queen's psychic dominance. Queen Solaris herself began to interrogate Andrew personally. In their verbal sparring, he sensed her growing fascination with his immunity and unwavering courage. Andrew realized his unique resistance might be the key to humanity's survival. If only he could escape and warn Earth's remaining defenders. As Solaris questioned him, Andrew detected something unexpected: doubt. The alien queen's certainty in human inferiority was cracking. A storm was brewing, with Andrew at its center, that could reshape the future of both species. Strapped to the cold metal table, Andrew Bryant allowed himself a small, grim smile. The Catarians had made a grave mistake in keeping him alive. They would soon learn why, even in the face of alien queens, humanity should never be underestimated. Andrew's mind raced as he lay strapped to the cold metal table. The constant barrage of tests and interrogations had taken their toll, but his commitment remained unbroken. He sensed a shift in Queen Solaris's demeanor during their latest encounter, a flicker of uncertainty in her compound eyes. Before he could ponder this further, the door to his containment chamber hissed open. 2 Catarian guards entered, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the harsh lights. "The Queen commands your presence," one of them clicked, mandibles twitching. They released Andrew from his restraints and led him through winding corridors of the mothership. The vessel's alien architecture loomed around him, organic curves blended with sleek technology, creating an unsettling fusion of biology and machinery. They arrived at a large circular chamber, unlike anything Andrew had seen before. The room was bathed in a soft, amber light that pulsed gently. The air felt different here, warmer, more humid. It reminded Andrew of Earth's tropical regions. Queen Solaris stood in the center of the chamber, her massive form dominating the space. Her exoskeleton shimmered with iridescent hues as she turned to face Andrew. "Leave us," she commanded the guards, who quickly retreated. Andrew tensed, unsure of what to expect. Solaris's gaze bore into him, her antennae twitching with awe-inspiring curiosity. "Human," she began, her voice resonating through the chamber. "Your continued resistance to my abilities is unprecedented. I seek to understand the intricacies of your species' biology and behavior." Andrew's eyes narrowed. "And how do you plan to do that, Your Highness?" he asked, unable to keep a hint of sarcasm from his voice. Solaris's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound Andrew had come to recognize as a sign of agitation or excitement. "I wish to study your mating practices," she declared. Andrew blinked, momentarily stunned. "Excuse me." "Our species reproduces through psychic bonding," Solaris explained, "yet humans engage in physical intimacy. I must understand this process." As the implications of her words sank in, Andrew's mind whirled. This was unexpected, potentially dangerous, but also an opportunity. If he could gather information about Qatarian weaknesses. "And how exactly do you propose we do this?" Andrew asked cautiously. Solaris gestured around the chamber. "This environment has been prepared to replicate Earth-like conditions. We will engage in human mating rituals here." Andrew's heart raced. He needed to tread carefully. "Your Highness, human mating is more complex than just physical acts. There's usually a process of courtship, of building trust and intimacy." Solaris's head tilted, her antennae quivering with interest. "Explain this process." Seeing an opening, Andrew took a deep breath. "It often starts with simple physical contact. May I approach you?" Solaris nodded, her posture tense but curious. Andrew stepped closer, noting how Solaris's exoskeleton seemed to ripple with anticipation. Slowly, he reached out and took one of her large, alien hands in his own. The effect was immediate and startling. Solaris jerked back, her entire body shuddering. What is this sensation?" she demanded, her voice wavering. "It's called touch," Andrew explained, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Humans use it to express affection, to comfort, to connect." Solaris stared at her hand, then back at Andrew. "Continue," she commanded, her usual confidence notably absent. Andrew gently took her hand again, this time slowly running his thumb across her palm. He watched in fascination as Solaris's exoskeleton shifted colors, from deep purple to a softer lavender. "Interesting," he murmured. "Your skin changes color with touch. Does it feel different in different areas?" Solaris's breath came in short, rapid bursts. "Yes, the sensations vary. It is overwhelming." Andrew continued his exploration, noting how different touches elicited various responses. He observed that certain areas of Solaris's exoskeleton seemed more sensitive, causing more dramatic color changes and temperature fluctuations. As the session progressed, Solaris became increasingly agitated. Her usual composure crumbled, replaced by a mix of confusion and vulnerability Andrew had never seen in the alien queen. "Enough!" Solaris suddenly cried out, pulling away. Her entire body trembled, exoskeleton cycling through a kaleidoscope of colors. This is not what I expected. How can such simple contact produce such intense reactions?" Andrew watched her carefully, mind racing with the implications of what he'd learned. The Qatarians' reliance on psychic abilities had left them ill-prepared for direct physical stimuli. This could be the weakness humanity needed to turn the tide of the war. Solaris paced the chamber, her movements erratic. "I must process this information. You will return to your holding cell while I consult with my scientist." As the guards led Andrew away, he caught a final glimpse of Solaris. The once fearsome queen looked shaken, her certainty visibly crumbling. He had planted a seed of doubt, and now he needed to find a way to nurture it into something that could save humanity. Back in his cell, Andrew's mind raced with possibilities. He had gained valuable insights into Qatarian biology and psychology, but he was still a prisoner. He needed to find a way to escape, to get this information to Earth's defenders. And perhaps, he thought, he could use Solaris's newfound vulnerability to his advantage. As he pondered his next move, Andrew heard a commotion in the corridor outside. The ship's crew seemed agitated, their clicks and chirps more frantic than usual. Something had changed. The balance of power had shifted, however slightly. Andrew allowed himself a grim smile. The game had changed, and he intended to play it to humanity's advantage. The commotion in the corridor grew louder, drawing Andrew's attention back to his immediate surroundings. He pressed his ear against the cell door, straining to catch snippets of the agitated Qatarian chatter. Though he couldn't understand their language, the urgency in their voices was unmistakable. Suddenly, the door slid open, revealing two Catarian guards. Their exoskeletons gleamed with an iridescent sheen, antennae twitching nervously. "Come," one of them clicked, mandibles quivering. "More tests." As they led him through the winding corridors of the mothership, Andrew's mind raced. The ship's atmosphere felt different, tenser, more chaotic. He caught glimpses of Catarian crew members huddled in small groups, their conversations abruptly ceasing as he passed. They arrived at a vast laboratory, filled with alien equipment that hummed and pulsed with otherworldly energy. Catarian scientists scurried about, their movements frantic and purposeful. In the center of the room stood an imposing medical apparatus, surrounded by holographic displays flickering with data. "Strap him in!" a familiar voice commanded. Queen Solaris emerged from the shadows, her massive form radiating an aura of nearly unleashed agitation. Her compound eyes fixed on Andrew, glowing with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. As the guards secured him to the device, Andrew noticed Solaris's erratic movements. Her exoskeleton shifted colors rapidly, cycling through shades of purple and blue. She paced around him, antennae twitching spasmodically. "Your Highness," Andrew said, keeping his voice steady, "I thought we were done with the physical examinations." Solaris's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Silence, human. Your biology holds secrets. Secrets that could reshape the future of my entire species." The machine whirred to life, bathing Andrew in a soft, pulsating light. He felt a tingling sensation across his skin as various probes and sensors descended from the ceiling, scanning every inch of his body. Hours passed as the Catarian scientists subjected Andrew to a battery of tests. They took tissue samples, monitored his brain activity, and bombarded him with various energy fields. Through it all, Solaris watched intently, her agitation growing with each passing moment. Finally, a scientist approached the Queen, chittering excitedly. Solaris's eyes widened as she examined the holographic display before her. "Impossible," she breathed, her voice a mix of awe and fear. Andrew strained against his restraints, trying to catch a glimpse of the data. "What is it?" he asked, unable to contain his curiosity. Solaris turned to him, her compound eyes gleaming with a newfound intensity. "Your DNA, human. It contains a genetic marker unlike anything we've ever encountered, a shield against psychic interference." The implications of this revelation hit Andrew like a thunderbolt. If humans possessed a natural defense against the Catarians' primary weapon, it could change the entire course of the war. Solaris's next words confirmed his suspicions. "With this trait, we could create a new generation of Catarian queens, more powerful than ever before." As the Queen lost herself in grandiose visions of the future, Andrew noticed a commotion near the laboratory entrance. A group of Catarian warriors burst in, led by a battle-scarred male with an air of authority. "My Queen," the leader addressed Solaris, his tone a mix of deference and urgency. "We must speak immediately." Solaris whirled on the newcomer, her massive form looming over him. "General Zix, how dare you interrupt my work?" The general stood his ground, mandibles clicking nervously. "Forgive me, Your Highness, but there are concerns among the crew. Your recent behavior has caused unrest." Andrew watched the exchange intently, noting the power dynamics at play. He could sense the tension between the Queen and her subordinates, a rift he might be able to exploit. Solaris dismissed the general with a wave of her hand. "Your concerns are noted, Zix. Now leave us. I have more important matters to attend to." As Zix and his warriors reluctantly withdrew, Andrew caught the general casting a suspicious glance in his direction. The look in the alien's eyes sent a clear message. He viewed the human prisoner as a threat to be eliminated. Over the next few days, Andrew was subjected to increasingly invasive tests. He endured brain scans, genetic analysis, and even attempts to artificially replicate his unique DNA marker. Through it all, he observed the growing discord among the Catarian crew. Whispers of dissent reached his ears as he was transported between the laboratory and his cell. Lower-ranking Catarians questioned their queen's obsession with human biology, fearing it would weaken their species' dominance. During one particularly grueling session, Andrew overheard a heated argument between Solaris and General Zix outside the laboratory. "Your fixation on this human specimen is compromising our mission," Zix hissed. "The other queens grow suspicious. If they learn of his abilities—" Solaris cut him off with a psychic blast that made Andrew's head throb, even from a distance. "You forget your place, Zix. I will not allow anyone to interfere with my work. Not you, not the other queens, not anyone." As the queen stormed off, Andrew's mind raced with possibilities. The Catarian power structure was fracturing, creating potential opportunities for escape. He needed to act soon, before Solaris's desperation drove her to even more extreme measures. That night, as Andrew lay in his cell, he began to formulate a plan. He recalled the environmental controls he had observed during his time on the ship, the careful balance of temperature and atmospheric composition maintained for the Catarian crew. If he could disrupt those systems, create chaos throughout the mothership, it might provide the distraction he needed to reach an escape pod. But first, he would need to break out of his cell and access the ship's control systems. As he plotted his next move, Andrew heard the telltale hiss of his cell door opening. He tensed, expecting another round of tests. Instead, he found himself face-to-face with Queen Solaris herself. The Catarian Queen's eyes glowed with an unsettling intensity. Her exoskeleton rippled with shifting colors, betraying her agitated state. "Human," she said, her voice low and urgent, "I require your assistance. Your mind holds the key to our future, and I must access it directly." Andrew's heart raced as he realized what Solaris intended. She wanted to form a psychic bond with him, a dangerous gambit that could either provide him with crucial information or leave his mind shattered. As Solaris advanced, her antennae quivering with anticipation, Andrew steeled himself for what was to come. The fate of humanity might well rest on his ability to withstand and manipulate this alien queen's bold strategy. Andrew's mind reeled as Solaris's psychic presence loomed over him. The alien queen's antennae quivered with anticipation, her compound eyes fixed on his face. In that split second, he made a decision that would alter the course of the war. Instead of resisting, Andrew relaxed his mental defenses, allowing Solaris to establish a tenuous psychic connection. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a foreign consciousness brushing against his own, probing and searching. Solaris's eyes widened in surprise. "Fascinating," she murmured, her voice a mix of awe and confusion. "Your mind? It's not what I expected." Andrew felt a surge of information flooding his consciousness, fleeting glimpses of Tarian society, their hierarchical structure, and the complex web of psychic bonds that held their empire together. He realized that this connection, however brief, could provide invaluable intelligence for Earth's defenders. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Solaris jerked back, breaking the psychic link. "What is happening?" she demanded, her voice sharp with anger and fear. Before Andrew could respond, the door to his cell burst open. General Zix stormed in, flanked by a group of heavily armed Catarian warriors. "My queen!" he hissed, mandibles clicking rapidly. "The human has compromised our systems. We're losing control of the ship." Chaos erupted in the narrow corridor outside. Andrew heard the sound of panicked Tarians, their chittering voices rising in a cacophony of confusion and fear. He realized that his earlier manipulations of the ship's environmental controls had escalated into a full-blown crisis. Seizing the moment of distraction, Andrew ducked under Solaris's massive form and bolted from the cell. He sprinted down the twisting corridors of the mothership, his heart pounding in his chest. The disoriented Catarian crew members barely noticed him as he weaved through their ranks, too preoccupied with the malfunctioning systems around them. As he ran, Andrew's mind raced with possibilities. He had intended to make a break for the escape pods, but now he saw a greater opportunity. If he could remain aboard the ship, he might be able to gather even more crucial intelligence and exploit the growing rift within the alien hierarchy. Rounding a corner, Andrew stumbled upon a hidden alcove. Inside, he found a compact communications center, its displays flickering with streams of alien data. Years of military training kicked in as he approached the console, fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls. Within minutes, Andrew had hacked into the system and established a secure, encrypted channel to Earth's remaining defense forces. He transmitted a rapid-fire burst of information, details about the Tarians' vulnerabilities, their susceptibility to physical stimuli, and the potential weaknesses in their psychic abilities. "This is Lieutenant Andrew Carter," he whispered into the comms, transmitting from inside the Captivity mothership. "I repeat, I am aboard the enemy vessel. The aliens are in disarray. Their queen, Solaris, is losing control. There's a power struggle brewing, and we need to act fast." As he finished his transmission, Andrew heard the sound of approaching footsteps. He quickly shut down the communications system and slipped out of the alcove, pressing himself against the wall of the corridor. A group of Qatarian scientists hurried past, led by a young female with iridescent blue markings on her exoskeleton. Andrew recognized her from the laboratory, Lieutenant Vix, one of the researchers who had been studying his DNA. Vix paused, her antennae twitching as she sensed his presence. She turned, her compound eyes widening as she spotted him. For a moment, they stared at each other, tension crackling in the air between them. To Andrew's surprise, Vix didn't raise the alarm. Instead, she motioned for him to follow her, glancing nervously at her colleagues. Intrigued and wary, Andrew fell into step behind the alien scientist as she led him through a series of winding passages. They emerged in a vast chamber filled with humming machinery, the ship's environmental control center. Vix sealed the door behind them and turned to face Andrew, her exoskeleton shifting through a range of colors that he had come to recognize as a sign of agitation. "Human," she clicked, her voice low and urgent. "I have questions about your species, your world. The Queen's obsession with your biology has awakened my curiosity. I believe there is more to humans than our leaders have told us." Andrew studied the young Tarian, noting the genuine interest in her eyes. He saw an opportunity to gain an ally, someone who might be willing to question the Empire's motives for invading Earth. "What do you want to know?" he asked cautiously. Vix's antenna quivered with excitement. "Your mating practices," she blurted out, her exoskeleton flushing a deep purple. "How do you form connections without psychic bonds? The concept is both shocking and intriguing." Andrew couldn't help but smile at the alien's earnest curiosity. He began to explain human relationships, courtship rituals, and the concept of emotional intimacy. Vix listened with rapt attention, her mandibles clicking softly in amazement. As they talked, Andrew surreptitiously manipulated the environmental controls, subtly altering the temperature and atmospheric composition in various parts of the ship. He knew these changes would further destabilize the Qatarian crew, exacerbating the chaos he had already set in motion. Suddenly, a deafening alarm blared through the ship's intercom system. A voice, which Andrew recognized as General Zix's, boomed through the speakers. "Attention all crew members. Queen Solaris has been deemed unfit for command. As of this moment, I am assuming control of this vessel and our mission. Any resistance will be met with force, for the glory of the Tarian Empire." Vix's exoskeleton paled to a ghostly white. "A mutiny," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is unprecedented in our history." Andrew's mind raced with the implications of this development. The internal strife presented a unique opportunity to strike a significant blow against the Qatarian invasion force. "Vix," he said urgently, "I need your help. We can end this conflict, save lives on both sides, but I need access to your weapon systems." The young Tarian scientist hesitated, her compound eyes flickering between Andrew and the control panels. He could see the conflict playing out across her features, duty to her people warring with her newfound doubts about the invasion. Before she could respond, the door to the environmental control room burst open. Queen Solaris stood in the threshold, her massive form heaving with rage. Her eyes locked onto Andrew, blazing with a manic intensity that sent chills down his spine. "You!" she hissed, her psychic power pulsing around her like a visible aura. "You have destroyed everything. My ship, my crew, my future. No more games, human. Your mind will be mine." As Solaris launched her psychic assault, Andrew braced himself for the onslaught, acutely aware that his next actions would shape not only his fate, but potentially the future of humanitarian relations and the course of the war itself. Andrew's mind raced as Solaris's psychic assault bore down upon him. He could feel the alien queen's rage and desperation pulsing through the air, threatening to overwhelm his senses. But in that critical moment, his gaze fell upon Vix, the young Catarian scientist who had shown him kindness and curiosity. Without hesitation, Andrew lunged forward, grabbing Vix by her exoskeleton and yanking her out of Solaris's line of sight. The sudden movement broke the queen's concentration, causing her psychic attack to dissipate harmlessly against the far wall. Solaris blinked in confusion, her compound eyes struggling to refocus. What are you doing?" she hissed, her voice a mixture of fury and bewilderment. Andrew positioned himself between Vix and the queen, his body tense and ready for action. "Enough," he said firmly. "This conflict has gone too far." Seizing the momentary lull in hostilities, Andrew darted towards the environmental control panel. His fingers flew across the alien interface, inputting commands he had memorized during his earlier explorations of the ship's systems. Alarms blared throughout the mothership as Andrew's sabotage took effect. The weapons systems flickered and died, leaving the massive vessel defenseless in the void of space. Solaris's eyes widened in horror as she realized what had happened. "You fool!" she screeched, her exoskeleton rippling with rage. "You've doomed us all!" Before she could retaliate, the door to the control room burst open once more. General Zix stormed in, leading a contingent of heavily armed Catarian rebels. The general's eyes darted between Solaris, Andrew, and the deactivated control panels. "It's over, my queen," Zix declared, his mandibles clicking in triumph. "Your reign ends now." Chaos erupted as loyalist guards poured in behind Solaris, engaging Zix's forces in close-quarters combat. The air filled with the buzz of energy weapons and the metallic clang of Catarian armor. Andrew seized Vix's arm, pulling her towards a maintenance hatch he had spotted earlier. "We need to move," he urged. "This is our chance." As they slipped away from the battle, Andrew could hear Solaris's agonized scream. He glanced back to see the queen collapse, struck by a stray energy blast. The sight of the once mighty ruler brought low-sent shockwaves through the combatants, momentarily halting the fight. Andrew and Vix raced through the ship's winding corridors, ducking into alcoves and side passages to avoid roving bands of confused Catarian crew members. The effects of Andrew's environmental manipulations were evident everywhere they looked. Catarians staggered about, their normally precise movements clumsy and uncoordinated. "What have you done?" Vix asked, her voice a mixture of awe and fear. Andrew's expression was grim as he replied, "What I had to, but it's not over yet. We need to get to the main communication array." As they navigated the labyrinthine passages of the mothership, Andrew explained his plan to Vix. The young Tarian scientist listened intently, her antennae twitching with growing excitement. "You believe this message could end the war?" she asked, hope evident in her voice. Andrew nodded. "It's our best shot, but we'll need your help to access the systems." Their progress was impeded by several encounters with both loyalist and rebel Catarian forces. Andrew's combat training proved invaluable as he dispatched alien warriors with swift, efficient movements. Vix, inspired by her human companion's bravery, utilized her scientific knowledge to create distractions and sabotage nearby equipment. As they approached the communications center, Andrew and Vix found themselves face-to-face with a group of elite Catarian soldiers loyal to General Zix. The aliens' mandibles clicked menacingly as they raised their weapons. Andrew's mind raced, searching for a way out of this deadly standoff. Suddenly, he remembered the strong reactions Solaris had exhibited to physical contact during their earlier encounters. An idea began to form in his mind, a high-stakes endeavor that just might work. "Vix," he whispered urgently, "I need you to access the environmental controls again. Can you do that from here?" The young scientist's eyes darted to a nearby access panel. "Yes, but why?" "Trust me," Andrew replied, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. As Vix worked feverishly at the control panel, Andrew stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of surrender. The Catarian soldiers tensed, their weapons trained on his chest. "Wait!" a new voice called out. Dr. Krell, the lead Catarian scientist, emerged from behind the soldiers. In his hands, he held a strange, pulsing device. "This human is too valuable to harm. My new invention will neutralize his psychic immunity, allowing us to control him." Andrew's heart raced as he saw the device in Krell's hands. He knew he had to act fast. "Now, Vix!" he shouted. Vix slammed her hand down on the control panel, activating the protocol Andrew had devised. Instantly, the ship's environmental systems began simulating the physical sensations associated with human mating practices. The effect on the Catarians was immediate and overwhelming. The elite soldiers stumbled, their exoskeletons flushing with a riot of colors. Dr. Krell dropped his device, his mandibles working furiously as he tried to process the unfamiliar sensations coursing through his body. Andrew seized the opportunity, lunging forward to destroy the fallen device. As it sparked and sputtered at his feet, he turned to Vix. "Quick, the communication array!" Together they raced to the main console, their fingers flying over the alien controls. Andrew's heart pounded in his chest as he prepared to broadcast his message to the entire Catarian fleet. He knew that the next few moments could change the course of the war and potentially reshape the future of human-Catarian relations. As Andrew took a deep breath, ready to speak to the stars, he caught sight of General Zix staggering into the communication center. The Catarian leader's eyes were wide with confusion, his exoskeleton shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors as he grappled with the unfamiliar physical sensations. The stage was set for a paradigm shift in the conflict. Andrew's actions had not only disrupted the Catarian command structure, but had also introduced a new element that could fundamentally change how the two species interacted. As he opened his mouth to speak, Andrew knew that the fate of both humans and Catarians hung in the balance. Balance. As Andrew opened his mouth to speak, the doors to the communication center burst open once more. A group of Catarians, their exoskeletons gleaming with an iridescent sheen unlike any he had seen before, rushed into the room. At their head was a tall, slender Catarian with piercing eyes and antennae that seemed to crackle with energy. "Stop!" the leader called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I am Dr. Nix, and what you're about to do could change everything." Andrew hesitated, his finger hovering over the broadcast button. He glanced at Vix, who looked equally surprised by this new development. Dr. Nix stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Andrew. "Human, I've been studying your species for years. Your physiology, your behavior, your mating practices." She pulled out a small, pulsing device from a pouch on her exoskeleton. "This device can simulate human mating sensations for Catarians. It could be the key to ending this conflict." General Zix, still reeling from the effects of Andrew's earlier manipulations, stumbled towards Dr. Nix. "Heretic!" he spat, mandibles clicking furiously. "Your research was forbidden." "Because you fear change," Dr. Nix retorted, her antennae filled. She turned back to Andrew. "Incorporate our findings into your broadcast. Show our people the truth about human intimacy and its potential benefits for our society." Andrew's mind raced, weighing the implications of this new information. He looked at the device in Dr. Nix's hands, then at the communication array before him. In a split second, he made his decision. "Vix, can you integrate Dr. Nix's data into our transmission?" he asked urgently. The young scientist nodded, her fingers flying over the alien controls. "Ready when you are." Andrew took a deep breath and began his broadcast. His voice, steady and clear, reverberated throughout the Catarian fleet. "Attention, Catarian forces. This is Andrew Mitchell, human prisoner aboard your mothership. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you've been told about humans and about yourselves." As Andrew spoke, Vix and Dr. Nix worked feverishly to transmit the data from the xenobiologist's research. Holographic displays flickered to life across the fleet, showing detailed anatomical comparisons between humans and Catarians, along with simulations of human mating practices. "For generations, you've relied on psychic bonds for intimacy," Andrew continued. "But there's another way. Physical touch, emotional connection without mental links. These are the foundations of human relationships, and they could revolutionize Catarian society." Throughout the mothership and across the fleet, Catarians reacted to the broadcast with a mixture of shock, curiosity, and outrage. Soldiers dropped their weapons, staring in awe at the holographic displays. Others recoiled in horror, their exoskeletons flashing angry colors. In the corridors of the mothership, chaos erupted. Catarians who had been exposed to Andrew's environmental manipulations now grappled with this new information. Some embraced their newfound sensations, while others lashed out in confusion and fear. General Zix, seeing his control slipping away, barked orders to his loyal troops. "Secure that device. We can use it to control the population, bend them to our will." A fierce firefight broke out in the communication center. Energy bolts sizzled through the air as Zix's forces clashed with Dr. Nyx's supporters and the remaining loyalists of Queen Solaris. Andrew ducked behind a console, pulling Vix down with him. "We need to protect that device," he shouted over the din of battle. "In the wrong hands, it could cause more harm than good." Dr. Nyx slid into cover beside them, clutching her invention protectively. "I have a plan," she said, her eyes gleaming with commitment. "But we'll need to reach the main power core." As they formulated their strategy, reports began flooding in from Earth. The human resistance, bolstered by Andrew's earlier intelligence, had launched a global counteroffensive. Catarian ground forces, confused by the conflicting messages from their fleet and the unexpected ferocity of the human attack, were falling back. Andrew's mind raced, processing the rapidly changing situation. He turned to Dr. Nyx and Vix, a daring plan forming in his thoughts. "We need to create an electromagnetic pulse," he said urgently. "Disable all Catarian technology temporarily. It's the only way to stop Zix and give your people a chance to experience life without psychic abilities." Dr. Nyx's antennae twitched in agreement. "The power core. If we overload it, we can generate a pulse strong enough to affect the entire fleet." The unlikely trio fought their way through the ship's winding corridors, encountering pockets of Tarian soldiers along the way. Some, exposed to the simulated human mating sensations, reacted with confusion and fear. Others showed signs of curiosity, even enjoyment, further fracturing the Tarian forces. As they neared the power core, Andrew's combat training kicked in. He moved with fluid grace, disarming Tarian warriors with swift, efficient movements. Vix and Dr. Nyx utilized their scientific knowledge, creating distractions and sabotaging nearby equipment to clear their path. Finally, they reached the massive chamber housing the ship's power core. Andrew raced to the main control panel, his fingers flying over the alien interface as he initiated the overload sequence. Alarms blared, and the ship's computer announced in a monotone voice, "Warning, core meltdown imminent. Evacuation protocols initiated." As Andrew worked, a sobering realization struck him. Initiating the electromagnetic pulse would not only cripple the Catarian fleet, but also destroy all evidence of Dr. Nyx's research, the very thing that could pave the way for peaceful coexistence between their species. Time was running out. General Zix's forces were closing in, their heavy footsteps echoing through the corridors. Andrew's hand hovered over the final command, the weight of two worlds pressing down upon him. He looked to Vix and Dr. Nyx, searching their alien features for guidance. The young scientist's compound eyes reflected his own uncertainty, while the xenobiologist's antennae quivered with a mixture of fear and anticipation. In this crucial moment, Andrew knew his decision would shape the future of both humans and Catarians. The hum of the power core grew louder, drowning out the approaching soldiers and the frantic beating of his own heart. With a deep breath, he prepared to make his choice, fully aware that the consequences would echo across the stars for generations to come. Andrew's finger hovered over the final command, his mind racing through the potential consequences. In that fraction of a second, he made his choice. Instead of triggering the electromagnetic pulse, he swiftly redirected the power surge into Dr. Nyx's device. "Brace yourselves," he shouted to Vix and Dr. Nyx as he initiated the sequence. The ship's systems groaned under the strain of the massive energy transfer. Dr. Nyx's device hummed and vibrated, its casing glowing with an otherworldly light. Suddenly, a wave of energy erupted from the device, flooding the entire mothership with an amplified simulation of human physical intimacy. The effects were immediate and overwhelming. Throughout the vessel, Catarian soldiers and crew members stumbled and fell, their exoskeletons flickering through a rapid succession of colors. the air filled with a cacophony of clicking mandibles and confused vocalizations as the aliens grappled with the unfamiliar sensations coursing through their bodies. In the corridor outside the power core, General Zix and his loyalist forces had been closing in on Andrew and his companions. As the energy wave hit them, Zix's eyes widened in shock. His mandibles worked furiously, unable to form coherent words. The general's exoskeleton flashed a brilliant array of colors before he collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience. Andrew turned to Vix and Dr. Nix, who were visibly shaken but still standing. "We need to move now," he said urgently. "This is our chance to take control of the ship." The trio raced through the corridors, encountering disoriented Catarians at every turn. Some writhed on the floor, lost in the flood of new sensations. Others stumbled about aimlessly, their usual military precision replaced by uncoordinated movements. They reached the main control center without resistance. Andrew's fingers flew over the alien interface, stabilizing the power core and averting the imminent meltdown. As the alarm ceased, he turned his attention to the ship's communication systems. "Dr. Nix, can you modify your device's signal for long-range transmission?" Andrew asked, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Catarian fleet orbiting Earth. The xenobiologist nodded, her antennae twitching with excitement. "Yes, but the effects may be less intense at that distance." "That's perfect," Andrew replied. "We don't want to completely incapacitate them, just enough to disrupt their operations." Working together, they quickly adapted the signal and began broadcasting it to the entire Catarian fleet. On the monitors, they watched as the carefully ordered formation of warships began to break apart. Some vessels drifted aimlessly, while others made erratic course changes. Vix monitored the incoming communications from the fleet. "It's working," she reported, her compound eyes wide with amazement. "Their command structure is collapsing. Ground forces are abandoning their posts." Andrew allowed himself a moment of relief before focusing on the next step. He opened a channel to Earth, hoping to reach the human resistance. To his surprise, a familiar face appeared on the screen. "This is Colonel Sarah Martinez of the Global Defense Initiative. Identify yourself." "Colonel, this is Andrew Mitchell. I'm aboard the Turian mothership. We've managed to incapacitate a significant portion of the invasion force using a modified Turian device. What's your status?" Martinez's eyes narrowed, a mix of suspicion and hope in her expression. "Mitchell, we thought you were dead." She paused, assessing the situation. "We're seeing widespread disarray among the Catarian forces. If what you're saying is true, this could be our chance to turn the tide." Over the next few hours, Andrew coordinated with Colonel Martinez, providing real-time intelligence on Turian positions and vulnerabilities. The human resistance launched a series of precision strikes, systematically dismantling the alien strongholds. As reports of human victories poured in, Andrew felt a growing sense of accomplishment. However, he knew that this was only the beginning of a new challenge. The effects of the mating simulation began to wear off, and the Catarians' reactions varied widely. Many younger aliens approached Andrew and his companions with curiosity, eager to learn more about the sensations they had experienced. Others, particularly older and higher-ranking Catarians, reacted with fear and anger. General Zix, having recovered from the initial shock, stormed into the control center, flanked by a group of loyal soldiers. "This is an abomination," he roared, his mandibles clicking furiously. "You've corrupted our entire species with your primitive human filth." Before the situation could escalate further, Dr. Nix stepped forward. "General, can't you see the potential here? This could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies relations. It could end this war and open up new avenues for both our peoples." As the two Catarians argued, Andrew's mind raced. He knew that simply defeating the Catarians wouldn't be enough. They needed a way to bridge the gap between their species, to find a path toward coexistence. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He turned to the ship's computer console and pulled up information on Catarian terraforming technology. "What if," he began, addressing both the humans and Catarians present, "we use this ship's capabilities to create a neutral zone on Earth, a place where both species could interact and learn from each other without the pressure of war?" The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications of Andrew's proposal. Dr. Nix was the first to speak up, her antennae quivering with excitement. Yes, this could be the perfect opportunity to continue my research on a larger scale. We could study the long-term effects of human-Catarian interaction in a controlled environment. Vix nodded enthusiastically. I could act as a liaison between our peoples. My experiences with Andrew have shown me the value of human perspectives. General Zix scoffed, his exoskeleton flashing angry colors. This is madness. Our species cannot be allowed to intermingle with these primitives. Andrew held up his hand, silencing the general. This isn't about losing your identity, General. It's about growing beyond the limitations of this conflict. Imagine what our species could achieve together instead of tearing each other apart. He turned back to the communication screen, where Colonel Martinez had been listening intently. Colonel, what do you think? Could we make this work? Martinez's expression was guarded, but Andrew could see a glimmer of interest in her eyes. It's a risk, Mitchell, a big one. But if it could prevent further bloodshed... She paused, considering. I'll need to discuss this with my superiors. But if you can guarantee the safety of our people, we might be able to arrange something. As Andrew began outlining his plan in more detail, he could feel the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. The next few days would be crucial in shaping the future of human-Catarian relations. He knew there would be resistance from both sides, but he was determined to see this through. The neutral zone would be just the beginning. Andrew envisioned a future where humans and Tarians could learn from each other, combining their strengths to explore the galaxy together. But first, they had to overcome centuries of mistrust and the fresh wounds of war. As he worked with Dr. Nix to modify her device for safe, controlled use in the cultural exchange program, Andrew couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. The fate of both species now rested on their ability to understand and accept their differences. The real challenge was just beginning. The real challenge was just unfolding before them. Months passed as Andrew worked tirelessly to establish Harmony Haven, the neutral zone on Earth where humans and Tarians could coexist. The area, once a battleground, now bustled with activity as members of both species cautiously explored their new shared space. Dr. Nix's device, now dubbed the Empathy Enhancer, became a cornerstone of the cultural exchange program. In a specially designed facility, Catarian volunteers lay on bioadaptive couches, their exoskeletons flickering with anticipation as they prepared to experience simulated human sensations. Remember, Dr. Nix instructed a group of Catarian participants, her antennae twitching with excitement, the sensations may feel overwhelming at first. Just relax and let your mind process the information. Meanwhile, in an adjacent room, humans donned sleek headsets that allowed them to tap into the basics of Catarian psychic communication. Andrew observed as a young woman gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. It's like I can feel the thoughts of others, she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Is this how Catarians perceive the world all the time? Vix, who had been assisting with the human participants, nodded. In a way, yes, but what you're experiencing is just a fraction of our full capabilities. As the exchange programs progressed, small breakthroughs in understanding began to emerge. Humans and Tarians who had participated in the Empathy Enhancer sessions found it easier to communicate and empathize with one another. Slowly, tentative friendships began to form. However, outside the protective bubble of Harmony Haven, opposition to the integration efforts grew. Andrew received reports of increasingly vocal extremist groups on both sides. He pored over intelligence briefings, his brow furrowed with concern. General Zix is rallying Catarian purists, he informed Vix and Dr. Nix during a strategy meeting. And on our side, Major Victor Hawkins is spreading fear about Catarian intentions. We need to be prepared for potential conflict. As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the compound. Andrew rushed to the control center, where technicians scrambled to assess the situation. Sir, we've lost contact with the Eastern Communication Array, a young operator reported, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. Environmental systems in sectors 3 and 7 are malfunctioning, and... She paused, her face paling. 3 empathy enhancers have been destroyed. Andrew's mind raced as he processed the information. This was no coincidence. It had to be a coordinated attack. But by whom? Human extremists? Catarian purists? Or both? As security teams mobilized to secure the affected areas, Andrew made a decision. He turned to Vix, who had followed him to the control center. "We need a joint human-Catarian security force," he said firmly. "It's the only way to show we're united against these threats." Vix's compound eyes reflected uncertainty. "There will be resistance to this idea, Andrew. Trust is still in short supply." "I know," Andrew replied, his heart made. "But we have to try. It's the only way to move forward." Over the next few weeks, Andrew worked tirelessly to implement the Joint Security Initiative. He faced pushback from both human and Catarian officials, but slowly, progress was made. A small group of volunteers from both species began training together, learning to combine human tactical skills with Catarian psychic abilities. As tensions continued to simmer, a new arrival at Harmony Haven caused a stir. Ambassador Lyra, a respected moderate voice in Catarian politics, stepped off a shuttle, her iridescent exoskeleton shimmering in the sunlight. Andrew greeted her warmly. "Ambassador Lyra, welcome to Harmony Haven. We're honored by your presence." Lyra's antenna twitched in a gesture of acknowledgement. "I've come to see for myself what you've built here, Andrew Mitchell. Many of my people are curious about the potential of human-Catarian cooperation." As Andrew gave Lyra a tour of the facilities, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. If someone of Lyra's standing could be convinced of the merits of integration, it could sway many undecided Catarians. Their tour was interrupted by excited chatter from a nearby research lab. Dr. Nix emerged, practically vibrating with excitement. "Andrew, Ambassador Lyra, you must come see this." Inside the lab, Dr. Nix and her human counterpart, Dr. Marcus Taylor, stood before a complex array of equipment. Between them, a human and a Catarian sat facing each other, connected by a web of sensors and pulsing energy fields. "We've done it," Dr. Taylor announced, his voice hushed with awe. "We've found a way to combine Catarian psychic abilities with human emotional responses. It's an entirely new form of communication." As they watched, the human and Catarian began to interact. Their faces displayed a range of emotions: surprise, joy, understanding, as they communicated in a way that transcended the limitations of both species. Ambassador Lyra's antennae quivered with interest. This could change everything," she murmured. Andrew nodded, his mind already racing with the implications. This breakthrough could be the key to lasting peace between humans and Catarians, but he also knew that such a revolutionary discovery would not go unchallenged. As if confirming his fears, alarms began to blare once more throughout Harmony Haven. Andrew's communicator crackled to life with an urgent message from the security team. "Sir, we've intercepted communications indicating a planned attack on Harmony Haven. It's a coalition of human and Catarian extremists. They're mobilizing now." Andrew's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. Everything they had worked for hung in the balance. He turned to Ambassador Lyra, Dr. Nix, and the others gathered in the lab. "We need to act fast," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. "If this attack succeeds, it could destroy everything we've built and reignite the war. We have to defend Harmony Haven, not just for ourselves, but for the future of both our species." As the group rushed to prepare their defenses, Andrew knew that the coming conflict would test the strength of the bonds forged between humans and Catarians. The fate of interspecies cooperation, and perhaps the galaxy itself, would be decided in the hours to come. Andrew's heart raced as he processed the gravity of the situation. The intercepted communications left no doubt. A coalition of human and Catarian extremists was mobilizing for an attack on Harmony Haven. Everything they had worked for hung in the balance. "We need to act fast," he said, turning to Ambassador Lyra, Dr. Nix, and the others gathered in the lab. "If this attack succeeds, it could destroy everything we've built. We have to defend Harmony Haven, not just for ourselves, but for the future of both our species." As they rushed to prepare their defenses, alarms blared throughout the compound. The joint human-Catarian security force, still in its infancy, scrambled to take up defensive positions. Andrew and Vix found themselves at the heart of the operation, coordinating their disparate teams into a cohesive unit. "Sector 3 reporting in," A human voice crackled over the comm system. "We've got visual on incoming hostiles. Mix of human and Tarian signatures." Vix's compound eyes flickered with concern. "They're using a pincer formation. Clever. We'll need to split our forces to counter." Andrew nodded, his mind racing through tactical scenarios. "Agreed. You take the eastern flank, I'll handle the west. Let's show them what our species can do when we work together." As they moved to their positions, Ambassador Lyra approached Andrew, her iridescent exoskeleton shimmering with an urgency he hadn't seen before. "Mitchell, we need to talk. Now." In a nearby command center, Lyra outlined her proposal. "We need to demonstrate the full potential of human-Catarian cooperation," she said, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "I suggest that you and I undergo an experimental procedure using Dr. Nix and Dr. Taylor's latest prototype. It would create a temporary but intense psychic and physical bond between us." Andrew's eyes widened. "Ambassador, that's unprecedented. The risks—" "Are necessary," Lyra interrupted. "This could be our only chance to bridge the gap between our species once and for all." After a moment's hesitation, Andrew nodded. "Let's do it." As they made their way to the lab, the sounds of battle erupted outside. The extremist forces had breached the outer defenses, their advanced Catarian weapons clashing against human military tactics. The air crackled with energy, weapon discharges, and the staccato of gunfire. Inside the lab, Dr. Nix and Dr. Taylor worked feverishly to set up the experimental bonding device. "This will temporarily merge your nervous systems," Dr. Taylor explained, attaching sensors to Andrew's temples. "You'll experience each other's physical sensations and emotions simultaneously." Dr. Nix turned to Lyra, her voice uncharacteristically serious. "Ambassador, are you certain about this? The level of connection you're about to experience? It's never been attempted before." Lyra's exoskeleton flashed with purpose. "We have no choice. Our people need this." As the final connections were made, an explosion rocked the building. The extremists were getting closer. Dr. Nix's hand hovered over the activation switch. "Ready?" Andrew and Lyra exchanged a final glance, then nodded in unison. The world exploded into sensation. Andrew gasped as his mind was flooded with alien perceptions. He could feel the complex network of Catarian psychic communication, a vast web of thoughts and emotions far beyond human comprehension. Beside him, Lyra trembled, overwhelmed by the raw physicality of human sensory input. But the effect didn't stop with them. The empathic link radiated outward, touching everyone in the vicinity. Humans and Catarians alike stumbled, disoriented by the sudden influx of alien sensations. On the battlefield, the fighting ground to a halt. Soldiers on both sides lowered their weapons, stunned by the shared experiences flooding their consciousness. General Zix, leading the assault from a nearby command post, clutched his head as human emotions crashed over him. Nearby, Major Hawkins blinked rapidly, his worldview shifting as he experienced Tarian thought patterns for the first time. Back in the lab, Andrew and Lyra remained connected, their shared experience deepening. Through their bond, they gained profound insights into the fundamental similarities and differences between their species. They saw the potential for true cooperation, the strengths each species could bring to a shared future. As the empathic field began to subside, Andrew and Lyra were carefully disconnected from the device. They looked at each other with new understanding, the weight of their shared experience evident in their eyes. We have to share this," Lyra said, her voice hoarse. "What we've learned, what we've felt, it could change everything." Andrew nodded, his mind still reeling from the experience. "But how do we translate this into something tangible? Something that can affect real change?" Before Lyra could respond, Vix burst into the lab. "Andrew, Ambassador, you need to see this." They followed him outside to find a scene of stunned silence. Human and Catarian combatants stood side by side, weapons forgotten as they grappled with the lingering effects of the empathic field. In the distance, General Zix approached, his normally imposing figure now uncertain. Beside him walked Major Hawkins, his face a mask of confusion and dawning realization. As they reached Andrew and Lyra, both leaders seemed at a loss for words. Finally, General Zix spoke, his mandibles clicking softly. What was that? What did you do to us? Andrew looked at Lyra, then back at the assembled crowd. He took a deep breath, knowing that his next words could shape the future of both species. We showed you the truth, he said. Now, the question is, what are we going to do about it? Andrew said, his voice firm yet compassionate. The assembled crowd stood in stunned silence, the lingering effects of the empathic field still resonating through their minds. General Zix's antennae twitched, a clear sign of internal conflict. Major Hawkins ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting between the humans and Tarians around him. I felt their fear, Zix said, his mandibles clicking softly. The humans. I always thought they were the aggressors. But now... Hawkins nodded, his expression a mix of wonder and shame. And I experienced the depth of Tarian community bonds. It's like nothing I've ever known. Andrew exchanged a glance with Ambassador Lyra, both of them recognizing the potential of this moment. This is just the beginning, Lyra said, stepping forward. What we've experienced here today can be shared with others, can lead to real change. In the weeks that followed, Harmony Haven became the epicenter of a diplomatic whirlwind. Leaders from Earth and the Tarian homeworld converged on the station, drawn by reports of the extraordinary events that had transpired. Andrew and Lyra found themselves at the heart of these discussions, their shared experience serving as a powerful testament to the potential for understanding between their species. Dr. Nix and Dr. Taylor worked tirelessly to refine their empathic bonding technology, developing a safer, more controlled version that could be used for short-term exchanges. As volunteers from both species began to participate in these sessions, the impact was immediate and profound. In one of the newly designated exchange chambers, a human diplomat named Sarah Chen emerged from a bonding session with her Catarian counterpart, Czar. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she tried to articulate her experience. It's like I could feel the entire history of their species, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Their struggles, their triumphs, their fears. It's all so much more complex than we ever imagined. Czar nodded, his compound eyes reflecting a new depth of understanding. And I now comprehend the human drive for individuality, the strength they draw from their unique perspectives. It's beautiful in its own way. As more individuals underwent these exchanges, a shift began to ripple through both human and Tarian society. Former hardliners found their convictions shaken, while those who had always advocated for peace felt vindicated. General Zix, once the face of Tarian aggression, became an unlikely champion for reconciliation. At a public forum broadcast across both worlds, he stood before a mixed audience of humans and Catarians. I have spent my life preparing for war, he began, his voice carrying a weight of emotion that surprised even him. But what I experienced in that moment at Harmony Haven showed me the true cost of conflict. We have more to gain by understanding each other than by fighting. Similar transformations occurred among human leaders. Major Hawkins, who had once viewed all Catarians as a threat, now worked alongside them to develop new training protocols for the Joint Security Force. It's not just about combining our tactical strengths, Hawkins explained during a demonstration. It's about truly understanding each other's thought processes, anticipating needs before they're even expressed. As the weeks turned into months, Dr. Nix and Dr. Taylor made a breakthrough that would change everything. They discovered a way to permanently enhance both humans and Catarians, allowing them to tap into a shared empathic field without external devices. The first volunteers for this procedure were, fittingly, Andrew and Ambassador Lyra. As they emerged from the enhancement chamber, their eyes met and a wordless understanding passed between them. It's like a background hum, Andrew said, trying to describe the sensation. I can sense the emotions of those around me, but it's not overwhelming. It's just there. Lyra nodded, her antennae quivering with excitement. And I can process human sensory input without difficulty now. It's as if our minds have expanded to accommodate each other's perspectives. The impact of this development was immediate and far-reaching. As more individuals underwent the enhancement, barriers that had once seemed insurmountable began to crumble. The Catarian fleet, which had loomed over Earth as a symbol of fear and oppression, transformed into a force for exploration and scientific discovery. On the bridge of the former Catarian flagship, now christened the Unity, human and Catarian crew members worked side by side. Captain Elena Rodriguez, a seasoned human space veteran, stood next to her Catarian first officer, Zixtal. "Sensors are picking up an anomaly in the Proxima Centauri system," Zixtal reported, his compound eyes scanning the holographic display. Rodriguez nodded, feeling a ripple of excitement through their shared empathic link. "Plot a course. Let's see what's out there." As the ship engaged its engines, Rodriguez couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. Just months ago, the sight of the Tarian ship would have sent humanity into a panic. Now, they were embarking on a journey of discovery together. Back on Earth, the changes were equally dramatic. In cities around the world, humans and Tarians mingled freely, their enhanced empathic abilities fostering a level of understanding that would have been unthinkable before. In a bustling market in New Delhi, a Catarian merchant named Vexilor engaged in friendly haggling with a human customer. Their banter was punctuated by flashes of shared emotion, amusement, skepticism, and finally, satisfaction as they reached a deal. "You drive a hard bargain, my friend," Vexilor said, his mandibles clicking in a Catarian expression of respect. The human, an elderly woman named Priya, grinned back. "And you, sir, have excellent taste in textiles. My granddaughter will love this." As night fell over Harmony Haven, Andrew stood at a viewport, gazing out at the stars. Ambassador Lyra joined him, their enhanced senses allowing them to share a moment of quiet contemplation without words. "We've come so far," Andrew said finally, breaking the comfortable silence, "but there's still so much to do." Lyra nodded, her antennae brushing against Andrew's shoulder in a gesture of affection. "Indeed, but now we face the future together." As they watched, a new ship emerged from Earth's atmosphere, a vessel of unique design, combining elements of both human and Tarian technology. It was a physical representation of the new era they were entering, one of cooperation and shared purpose. The ship's comm system crackled to life, broadcasting a message to Harmony Haven and beyond. "This is the Earth Star, embarking on its maiden voyage. To all who can hear us, we carry a message of peace and an invitation to join us in exploring the wonders of our galaxy." Andrew and Lyra exchanged a smile, their enhanced senses resonating with the hope and excitement emanating from the ship's crew. As the Earth Star engaged its engines and set course for the unknown, they knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in the shared history of humans and Tarians.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.